block today is called Tossed Triangles, and it finishes at 12 inches. I will have a code down here that you can scan either from your computer or from a printed copy of this, and you will go to the video that you're watching today. Here's the diagram for the block, and this really consists of 4 blocks from my Tossed Triangles quilt video. I'll show you that in just a minute. These are 6-inch finished parts of the block, so we put 4 together and we have a 12 by 12 block. And this is a good way to use your bigger chunks of fabric because these are cut 3.5 inches, and this is a 3-inch finished half square triangle. Here are the patches. There are 3 of them. Patch A is a 3-inch finished half square triangle. We'll cut 3 7/8 inch squares and cut each square in half once diagonally, and we'll have 2 patches, and we need 1 patch of each. Patch B is a 3-inch by 6-inch finished rectangle. We'll cut 6.5 inches by 3.5 inches, and we need 1 patch of each. Patch C is a 3-inch finished square. We cut 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches, and we need 1 patch for each. Here are the fabrics I've chosen for this block, and I'm paired together a dark and a light, and I've laid them out per unit. So this is a 6-inch unit, and this is a 6-inch unit, and these 2 are 6-inch units. And you put the units together and they make this 12-inch block. But before we go on to sewing the block, this is a repurposed block from a video I made called Tossed Triangles. This is the quilt here. There's a link in the description of the video, and there's also going to be a link down here at the bottom of the instructions for the block of the day we're doing right now. This tells you how to rotary cut 4 blocks at a time using a light piece of fabric and a dark piece of fabric. And my intention with this quilt was to be able to use bigger chunks of fabric of any kind of scraps. And this is an 8.5 by 16.5 inch piece of fabric. So you take 1 light and 1 dark, and you'll get 4 blocks out of this. This tells you how to piece them. And then we also have AccuQuilt cutting, and from the same piece of fabric you can use your AccuQuilt and get 4 blocks as well. And this tells you how to piece those. If you have big chunks and you want to use your big chunks to make this quilt, this will tell you how to do it. Now let's go on to see how we piece this block. Okay, I had to change out my cutting mat because you couldn't really see the fabrics with that other cutting mat. I've separated out the individual units. There are 4 units in this block, and each of the units will finish at 6 inches. I'm going to start by taking all of the half square triangles, but I'm going to keep them separate so I won't get the fabrics confused. I'm going to piece the 4 half square triangles for these units. I've sewn all the half square triangles together, and I hand cut these. I have to cut off the little nubs from piecing and pressing because they just get in the way, like this. Now we'll put these back into the stacks where they belong. The next thing we'll do is sew the C patch onto the half square triangle. Pay close attention to the placement of the fabric. We take this half square triangle and this square. What we want to do is place the different fabric, the contrasting fabric, between the 2 matching fabrics, because we need that separation to get the design. Now we will sew all of the squares to all of the half square triangles. Next we're going to piece the rectangle to the half square triangle and the square unit. As I look at these fabrics now, I can tell that they probably weren't good choices. There's just not enough contrast. The first quilt I made was all scraps, so I could choose all the different contrasting fabrics, but sometimes these quilts look good when they don't contrast as well. But anyway, you can see how they look and make your own decision of what you want to put in the quilt. Now I have the rectangles are sewn on, and they've been pressed when the seams have pressed open. Now to put the block together, you'll take these units and look at the diagram, and it tells you that these corner ones, the points of the triangles are pointing inward, and with these, they're pointing outward. And you put them together this way. I'll just put the block together and we'll be finished. And someone asked me about how I press my seams open. I use this little, it's a piece of wooden molding that you buy from the hardware store in the lumber department. It's wooden and it's half round. It's like a cylinder that's been cut in half, and it lays flat, but it's got a curved top. I covered it with a leftover piece of batting, and I used cotton batting because I didn't want anything with any polyester in there, because I used as hot an iron as I can get, and the polyester might melt. So I used cotton batting, and you can see this is well used. What you do is, when you have your fabric like this, you just lay it on top of this. Since this is raised, it helps to get everything else out of the way. And you put this in the middle and just take your iron, open up the seam, and just press it. And I press down hard on here, press with high heat. Another thing that this does, because it's raised, it keeps these out of the way that you've already pressed previously. If I had it flat like this and I was trying to press this, the iron would come by and maybe catch on here and flip this over. This is really good to do that. And I think this was like 8 feet long, and I cut it to about 18 inches. This seems to be a good size. You can get some of your friends together and buy one piece and a bunch of scraps batting. And I just used Elmer's glue. Actually, I just used this stick glue on it, and it stayed together. You can see how it's got all these little pieces of thread on it. But anyway, that's how I press my seams open. You take your piece that you're going to press and try to center it as much as you can on this little wooden piece, and open it up with your fingers. And I'll use my iron, and I just press it like this. I'm lightly pressing right now because I don't want to distort the fabric. And then I press down to get the seam really open. And once I open it up, then I'll press this, but I'm not going to press it right now on the cutting mat. But you can see how this raises up and the iron does not get caught on these other pieces. Now I'll take this to the ironing board and press this side. And usually what I do once the block is finished, I'll put starch on it and starch the whole thing. And here's the block all starched. Here is the backing. Now don't forget, if you want to see how to make the scrap quilt or make this quilt bigger, there's a link in the description below the video, and there's a link also on your instructions where you can go see the video and download the instructions for the quilt. Thank you for watching.